This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video.
Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engine's Chair. This episode, we are going to finish up the painting masks on the secondary hull, engineering hull, whatever you want to refer to it as. We're going to get that done. We're going to get this part here done, and I'm going to talk about some of the lighting on this. There's a couple of issues with this as far as the lighting. We're going to get these two pieces done that go on the sides of that piece, and see where we're going to go from there. So without further ado, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, here we go. So I've got the majority of the painting done on the top side and on the bottom. And I have to say, I think Gary hit the nail on the head with these colors and with the masks themselves. They really come out nice. They're real easy to use. They kind of fall into place. The only thing I'll say is when you get on the bottom here, do be careful with these masks because just some of the curves, the way that the hull is, not anything wrong with the mask, but just the way they have to fit around some of these shapes. They may not lay perfectly flat in some spots. So I had one, I think this one that goes across the backside here that I actually just cut a little bit just to get it to lay down nice. And then I think it was this big one that goes here. I think you'd be better off cutting it. I don't remember where that cut was because I've been taking the mask off now, but I think you'd be better off cutting it and then laying it in two parts versus trying to put the whole thing down because it's just the way it has to fit around this shape and then curve over this side of the hull makes it a little hard to get it to lay down perfectly otherwise. But and then you've got a couple masks that they hang over because they have to cover a larger area. When they painted this, they didn't exactly follow, when they painted the studio model, they didn't exactly follow the panel lines exactly. So there's a couple areas where these masks have to cover a flat area and then a raised area at the same time. So just make sure you get them down as much as you can and then come in, like Gary says, straight down with the airbrush. I did have these two spots for some reason. I didn't get enough tan on them. I may fix them, I may not. I'm going to weather this anyway, so I think there's enough tan there. And even if there's not, there's enough there for it to just look weathered versus like I didn't get enough paint on there. But I did do a little different on the center here. Now Gary calls for this to be dark gray. And I'm going to say that to my eyes, the dark gray looks more like a dark brown. But that has a lot to go back to how people see colors differently in that. When I look at the studio model, this color does look correct to the studio model. So regardless of what you call it, this color looks correct to me. But it looks more like a brownish to me than a dark gray, but it's just my opinion. But anyway, this the directions call for this to stay white and this to be a dark brown. And actually, when you look at, let me pull up this picture. When you look at this picture of the underside, it's more of a dark bronze color to me than just a straight brown. So what I did was I mixed up my own colors for this. I think it looks pretty close to, let me focus here, pretty close to what the studio model looks like. I'm going to weather this. This will get weathered more. It'll get some highlights to it. which will get it closer in appearance than what it looks right now. But to me, it's a little bit on the darker side, more of a dark bronze. And the way I got this color was I took 2 parts of this antique copper from Folk Art and 3 parts of gunmetal, metallic gunmetal. And then I added 1 part, and you can use any brand of these colors, 1 part silver. And that just gave me what I thought was a pretty close finish to what the studio model looks like. And then there's, like I said, there's some highlights when you look at that picture that there's a little bit of like silvering around some of these triangles here. And there's a couple other things. But that's how I mixed that color there. I sprayed it on, and I came back for this center part, because when you look at the studio model again, the center part's like a black. It's definitely darker than the rest of this. So I painted this center a black color. And I'll just say though that the kit part, I believe this had a notch in it to where you have to put it on this in a certain way, is actually positioned wrong for the to match the Kronos model. These X's, these crosses here should be more like an X pattern versus how they, I'll show you that picture again just so you can see what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is these lines here. Focus this a little bit. Yeah, you see these lines, it looks almost like a bullseye. That should be more like an X pattern. I'll show you the studio model picture again so you can see. There, you see how that should be more like an X pattern versus a cross. But there was a notch in this part where you had to put it in a certain position for it to sit down. What I'd recommend is just taking that notch out, taking it off of this piece, I think it was. That way you can position this more appropriately to what the studio model is showing. But not a big deal. I'm not worried enough about it to try that. I really don't have any way to get in there and pop it out now because I've already sealed this backside up. If this backside was still open, I could reach in there and try to pop it out and fix it. But it's not that big of a deal. I'm not too worried about it. But just something to mention in case you want to be a rivet counter. So this is actually positioned a little bit off from what it should be. But anyway, I've got this painted to what looks more appropriate to me. I'll do some weathering on it when I do the weathering of the rest of this. And I think it'll look pretty good. But really happy with the way the mask turned out. And I'm going to move on now to the next part, which I'm not even sure what the next part is. I guess I've got to look and see where we're going to now. So give me a minute and we'll be back. Alright guys, so we've got another modification we have to make. This part back here. We want it's on the side. They want us to modify, this is the lighting kit instructions. Now this is the Katinga side, but this goes for the Katinga and for the Kronos 1. But they want us to cut the sides off of this part here, which I think is part number 4. But they want us to cut the sides off. You see I've already cut one off here. And the easiest way to cut these off and get a clean cut is to use a micro saw. And I've got one here. And just lay it up against the inside edge. And then what you can do is just cut straight down. And we work. Camera's shaking. All right, there we go. Woo! That took too much work. Sorry, I just made everybody deaf. All right, there we go. That part is cleaned off now. We've got these two side parts, which now get glued on to the front of, where did it go? It disappeared on me. This part here. So now these pretty much get glued right like that. On the inside you've got these angled, a beveled edge on the inside of these. These just get mated to that beveled edge. Just like that. and it supposedly makes it a little easier to do the painting and then lighting it afterward. So I've got that ready to go. It gives you a nice, the microsaw gives you a nice clean smooth edge, so when we go to put this in place it should mate up perfectly. So I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna continue to work on building this, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, so I've got these parts just about done and ready. I've got those sides in place on here. What I recommend for that is you take the other part and stick it on the bottom there, and this is the part where your lights are actually going to mount. But get that in place, that way when you put these side pieces in, you get the angle right on it. It should touch the edges of this on each side. So I've got those in place. One thing I do want to mention though is that you've got openings at the back here. It's open just because of the way the angle is. And what's supposed to happen is these parts here are supposed to fit in here and make contact and block out that opening on the back, but they don't quite contact it all the way, and I can tell you're going to have a light leak right there if you don't. So best thing I think to do is probably once you get these parts in place, come in, backfill this with some tulip or that, and make sure you clear out that seam there, that opening. Otherwise you're going to get a major light leak there, and nobody wants light leaks. So just my suggestion for that. But that part's about done. I've just got to attach this back section yet, but I've got to work on getting the contact points where it came off the tree sanded smooth and take care of that. And then once I get that glued on, that'll be ready to paint. I've got these all together, and the main thing to point out about these is make sure you put your light in place before you seal these up, because once you seal these up, you can't put the light in there. You need to be able to secure it. Actually, your opening for the light is here. You need to be able to secure it to this side, and then it actually is mounted across from this opening. I'm not using the clear pieces, the clear inserts for any of this on the model, because I want to be able to paint these and not have to worry about masking this off. I'm not too worried about paint getting on the bulb because it sits so far back. It sits all the way on the opposite side here. But if I do want to mask it, I've got all these leftover masks from my TOS build that have come in handy for masking off these smaller light openings, and I'll use one of those if I need to, if I'm a little worried about that getting paint in there. But these are all sealed up and ready to go, and these just plug into I think this is harness C, and I don't plug these in all the way like I said because I don't want to risk breaking off any of the contacts, but there they are lit up, so that's going to work great. I will have to do some fill along the front here, because you can see right there's a little bit of a light leak. Same on that side, there's a little bit of light leak, so I'll fill this in. You've got 2 panel lines on the front of each of these right there, so I'll use my perfect plastic putty to fill that in, because I can come back with a Q-tip and clean that up, versus if I use my Bondo, I'm going to have to sand it off, and then I'm going to lose these panel lines. But the rest of this bottom half of it, I can use Bondo if I want to, and sand that. I don't think you really need to do much here because of these grill fins. It's a real good seam here, a real tight seam. You don't have to worry about much there. There's a little bit at the back that I may have to do some fill, and then this seam again around this back piece is real tight, so you don't have to really worry about that. And then the seam along here isn't bad either, along the top. So not a whole lot to work on with that. I do want to mention, while I'm thinking about it, I've got the rest of this painted up. I've got the front painted, and I do want to mention that Gary does point out in the second video that this is more like a brown versus a gray. He called it dark gray, but to me it looks more like a dark brown. But regardless of what you want to call it, it looks screen accurate to me, the color he came up with for this. So it's just semantics as far as what you want to call it, but it does look more like a dark brown to me than a dark gray. But it's looking good. I've got the back painted up, and that's good to go. The only thing I want to mention here, well, there's 2 things actually. One is this bottom piece, which I redid according to what I thought looked more accurate. But I had mentioned that this was more of a cross pattern on the studio model versus, it was more of an X pattern when you look at it in the pictures of the studio model versus this cross pattern as looking at it from from stern to aft. But this is actually correct. And let me show you this picture, the screenshot. When I looked at this screenshot, I was actually looking for screenshots showing whether or not this there was light coming from another area on this piece, but that's a whole nother topic. But when I was looking at it, I noticed that this is actually correct. This is how it appears in Star Trek 6 when you look at that screenshot. In addition to that, when I noticed that, I also noticed that these lights are not lit. And again, when I went back to the instructions, that's because I was looking at the Katinga instructions when I put those lights in place. That's no big deal. I just won't hook them up. The wire only runs to these two lights, so it's not going to deny light to anything else that should be lit. So I just won't plug these lights in. If you wanted to, though, there's no reason to think that just because they're not lit in the movie that they're not capable of turning these off and on a starship. So if you like the light, who's to say you're wrong? All right, you can use those lights if you want. The only issue you're going to run into is the top here. In order to light the top of the wing, you would have to use the Katinga part, which would make this inaccurate to the Kronos 1. But again, it's up to you how you want to do it. There's a couple other areas where there's lights. The spotlights aren't there. I'm going to talk about that when we get to the front. But it's always up to the builder as to what you want to do. Like I said, there's no reason to think that they're not capable of turning those spotlights off on a starship. So maybe they just weren't turned on at the time that we see it. But anyway, let me finish. I'm going to get this finished up and assembled. These are pretty much ready to go and get painted. Just unplug these. So these are ready to go pretty much. I just got to fill and sand a little bit on these. And then I got to get this back part on this and fill in sand anywhere I need that on that. And we'll be ready to paint these up. So give me a bit and we'll be back. Alright guys, so I've been working on getting all these parts done. I've got my purple plastic putty on here. I'm about ready to start working on getting that smoothed out and getting those seams cleared up. And I've been going through, and I already painted this, but I had to repaint some more white in there because I got a little bit too much gray in here. And the white wasn't going to do its job. You can see how reflective that white is though. So that's going to do good, adding some more light in there. And another solution for getting a little more light in that bulb, working on the bridge section here. You've got these two lights that I've talked about before that are supposed to come out the back. And the polar light instructions for the Kronos 1 do have you installing those lights. But those lights are not lit in Star Trek 6. And again, like I just mentioned, there's nothing saying they couldn't just turn those lights off. I mean, if you want to install them and use them, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to install them because they weren't lit when we see it in Star Trek 6, so I'm just not going to use it because I would rather take those lights and repurpose them to add more light inside the bulb section and for this front section, because from what I've seen from previous or other people's builds, is that there's a big lack of light in the front here and in this, specifically in this lower bulb section. There's not much light. That's why I painted the inside white. Hopefully that'll help reflect it. But if I take those two lights and use them for the internal lighting instead, I think it's going to help out a lot. But I've got this just about ready. I'm not attaching this part yet completely. And I actually may not even glue this in because it looks like I can just set this in place, and then that way if I need to remove it or access it for any reason I can. We'll see. If I don't get any light leaks around the bottom of it, I'm not going to worry about gluing this in place. I'm just going to stick it in place and just have it sit in there versus gluing it in. But there is also another modification that we have to do, and I almost feel like I should have some type of banner or something every time we have to modify something on this model. But the lighting kit wants you to take the top of the bridge part here. Let me focus on this if I can. And they want you to remove that raised edge around the inside here. So I've taken that down with my Dremel and then finished it off with some sandpaper and taking that all the way down. They also want you to do the same thing on this clear red part, which I've light blocked already, but they want you to remove the lip off the top of that as well. And so I've done that, and then I've come in and I've put some masking to help mask windows because that's what the instructions call for you to do, is mask this off to create those windows. Now, it's not real clear pictures. There's actually nothing that I've seen in the screenshots from Star Trek 6 to where you can see how these are lit, but you do get a real good close-up shot from the motion picture, and there's just some slits here, and you only get to see the one side, but it looks like you've got basically you've got 2 windows in the middle and then 1 flanking on each side. So that's the way I've done mine, and we'll see how this lights up. But I've masked this off using some 1mm or maybe this is 2mm Tamiya masking tape. You can see how that's masked off there, and that's actually the back side that masked off there, even though you don't really, I don't think you ever get any clear shots of how those windows look on the back side. But I just went ahead and masked them off in a way that looked good to me. And then I've done the front here as well. Let me pull these off. The front, I've done 1 window in the center and flanked it by another window on each side. So I've got 3 directly in the front. And then I've also got a window to each side of that, right around the side of the bridge there. I got that. I think I've got all the masks up. Nope. Still got this one here. Alright, so I've got all that masked, and you can kind of see how, let me see if I can focus this a little more. You can see how I've got those windows showing there, and then on the back side how those are showing. Let me see if I can put this part in here and maybe light it up and show you how this is going to look installed. Now, I'm not sure why they've got you lowering the bridge so much on this. When you look at the movie and screenshots from the movie, there's an obvious lip over top of that. And let's see if you can see that. Let me turn this overhead light off. See if that helps any. But yeah, so you can see how that's lighting up. That's going to light up there. Got the window on the side there. And then let's flip this around, take a look at the back. And the back is kind of blocked a little bit, but you can see those windows still there. So I think it's going to light up nice. I think it'll look good. But anyway, that's what I've done on this so far. I'm about ready to, like I said, I'm going to get the seams cleaned up on here. Oh, let me focus back now. We get the seams cleaned up on this part and on these 2 pieces here, and they'll be ready to paint. And then these parts here I'm going to paint individually. This tower part, and that'll just sit to the side for now. This tower part, this part I'll paint separately, and then I've got to this part here on the back of the bridge has to be red, and then everything else is the light gray, except I think there's a panel up here that's got to be a different color, and then there's some different colored panels, but we've got masks for all that. The only thing I got to paint with that doesn't have a mask is this part here has to be red, the tower has to be red, and this has to be red on top. And I think that's it. There might be another red part there somewhere, but the rest of this we should have masks for from the mask design kit. So I'm going to work on that, and we'll come back and take a look. Alright guys, so I've been working on getting last couple pieces finished up. I've got both of these parts are sealed up and some seam work done on them and primed. So they are ready for paint. This part has also been primed. Some seam work done across the top here mainly. I think that's really the only place I had to do seam work on this one was across the top here. I may do a little more work on that though, because I can still see that seam pretty bad right there. So probably do a little more work on that one. I've got the part where the bridge goes. I've got that primed. I'm ready to go. And working on some final parts for this. I've got the forward launching photon that I had masked off. Let me focus this so you can get a better look at what I did here. So you see what I did was I used some smaller masks to mask off each of these bulbs, I guess you could call them. And I just put a round mask in the middle. And what that's going to give me is you get this piece here. I put silver on the inside of that to make it kind of reflective. And this is going to go together like this. And then one of these bulbs, I believe, goes on here. And there we go. That's what that forward firing photon torpedo tube is going to look like. I've still got to paint the inside of this. Right now it's just the black kit color. I haven't painted that yet, so that's got to be painted yet. But I think that's going to light up nice. That should look good. So I'm pleased with that. That'll work. And I've been working on finishing off this section here. You can see I've got putty on here where I'm working on these seams. I used the perfect plastic putty because, again, there's some details on here in a couple spots where I don't want to sand it off. Although if you want to bring that detail out more, you could just sand that detail off and use some styrene to replace it. It's just like a couple little strips on this side. There's 4 on this side and 4 on this side. You could just replace them with some styrene strips, but I think I can just sand it and it should be fine. But I've been working on these parts on the side. And I had posed the question before. I wasn't sure how these were supposed to be painted. In terms of, I know that you can see light coming from here in a couple shots, but I wasn't sure how it was. Well, I had someone showed, let me look that up. Mr. Glade Mason. He shared this photo with me. Let me pull this photo up and show you. All right, but he shared this photo with me. I don't know how somebody got these shots, but basically it shows those windows, those little openings being masked off. Now, you can try to mask off these little itty bitty, I don't know how well it's going to show up with, yeah, maybe right there. But I don't know if you can see that, but if you've got this kit, you'll know what I'm talking about. These little window ports on here. That's where the light's supposed to come from. So what I did was I light blocked these. I primed them black. And I painted this, the black mixture that Gary has on his paint guide. I need to be further back with this. Okay, about right there, I guess. And what I did was, I'll show you the lighting effect first, and I'll tell you how I did this. But you can see how that's lighting up. You still got the detail there. You've got the black in between the little lines in there, the grooves in there. Everything's got the light's kind of washing it out. Might need to focus a little bit more too. Hang on one second. Let's bring this focus up a little bit more. There we go. But so you can see the lines are still there on everything. So that's going to light up nice. And the way I did this was I just light blocked it. I painted it to black. And I took my flat file and I just worked it along these windows, trying to being careful, making sure that you don't rub against the sides and rub the paint off there. But I just took my file and kept working at this until I took enough off to where the light shined through those slots like they need to, and it lights up real nice. It's going to work out well. I'll mask this off and then paint the gray, because the outside part here is going to be the hull gray, the same gray we use for the hull, the light gray color. So that's going to work out well for that. But so I've got that worked out, and thank you to Glade again for sharing that with me, how that was lit up, because I wasn't sure exactly how that was supposed to be lit. But with that worked out, I can get this finished up. I don't really think I'm going to need, let's see, I don't really think I'm going to need a lot of seam work on this piece here. It looks like, well, depending on which side this goes on. Oh, I've got some putty in the way there. But it looks like this will fit in place and shouldn't take a whole lot of, I may not have to do any putty work on this. I need to look at the studio model and see if there was a seam visible here. But if it does, what I'll do is I'll just use some more of that perfect plastic putty, because again, there's details, raised details on this edge here that you don't want to sand off. So that's what I'll do with that. But I'm glad Glade shared that, because I was prepared to have to do some thorough research, and he fortunately reached out and shared that with me. So there's the answer for how that needs to be detailed. So I'm going to get that detailed, and then I'm going to do a little more seam work on this, and we'll be ready when we come back. We'll be ready to start painting these parts here per Gary's paint guide and masking kit. So give me a little bit to work on that, and we will come back. All right, so I did get these two parts here painted up, and you can see how it turned out. Let me focus in here. Turned out really nice. This is a pretty straightforward painting project, not difficult at all. I did get just a little bit of where's that? Yeah, maybe not. I got just a little bit of a red bleed under the where the grills are here, but that's all right. That's going to be on the underside, and after some weathering, actually I can just use my thumb a little bit. It's because this craft paint, it's not really dried on there yet. I just rub it off a little bit, but yeah, it turned out real nice, and got that painted up. Now I will add that there is a small detail. I'll show you a picture of the studio model real quick. When you look at this, you'll notice that that little rod there on the side right here looks like it's probably a goldish color, so I might do that with just a little bit of gold. I don't know, it's some kind of, almost looks like a shock or something. Probably is off of a AMT model car or something, but that needs to be painted. It looks like I said, kind of like a gold color. So I'm gonna paint that with a really tiny paintbrush, and that'll be it for this part. That's pretty much the only detail. There's a piece of photo etch that goes over the top part here, which I'm assuming is going to be a decal in the kit, since I haven't been able to get my hands on any of the photo etch. But we'll add that on later. Other than that, that should pretty much be it for this part. I do have I will have to do a little bit of brush on with the paint on this part here from where I had the opening for the light covered up. But that being such a small little bit, brushing it's not a problem, that little small piece. So I'll get that done. But other than that, the only thing I'll add is when you mask this, you may want to wrap a little masking tape around this edge here and around this corner here. Didn't quite get these to fit, and it could just be my placement. Didn't quite get these to touch, or I wasn't confident enough that they were touching to not get a little blow under or underspray on the mask. So because the grills have fins, so you get these little depressed areas where paint can get up under there, I just went ahead and wrapped that corner with a piece of masking tape, and then this corner here as well. This one here is supposed to be red, so that one was fine. But just a little tip there, when you go to paint these, might want to mask those two corners. Other than that, everything went great with this. I'm going to pull these masks off of this one, and I am going to work on now getting this part painted, because while I've got red paint in the airbrush, I need to paint, there's a couple little parts, we need to paint these two openings for lights, and then these parts down here for the next step. I'm going to get this painted up so I can start working on how I want to do my lighting for these grills here, and get that done, get these attached, get this piece done. We'll wrap this episode up, and then when we come back, that just leaves the neck and the bridge and bulb section up front there to do. So I'm going to work on that, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, so I got this part here, trying to keep this together. Got this part here all painted up. Turned out nice, and I did a little bit different from what's in the paint guide. I did not paint this the shuttle bay door darker brown. I looked at the studio pictures, and this is just a case of people see colors differently. It didn't look any darker than me. To me, it just looked all tan. So I left this tan. It's up to you what you want to do. You can paint it the darker color per the instructions. But I left it the same color as everything else, because to me this looked the same. And another thing I noticed on the studio model too is that these looks like observation windows over the shuttle bay. This is actually smooth on the Kronos 1 model, as far as I could tell. Now, again, I've had to go back and take back a couple things I said. because later on I found out that apparently there were a couple changes made to this model for the flashback episode in Voyager, and maybe this is one that was done as well. I haven't gone back to Star Trek 6 to see if you see this part clear enough to tell whether this is smooth or whether there's windows over this. I don't think these were ever lit, but the studio model as they appear in the pictures, this is just smooth. There's no windows here. So take it for what it's worth. I have looked at the lighting, and it can be better. They've got one bulb in the middle here to light all these lights right here. And if I remember correctly, I'm going to look and confirm, I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be red. And this is a warm white bulb. So, and there's no clear inserts for this part. So I'm going to have to come up with something for that. I had already planned on filling this in with UV resin. So the only thing I can think is fill these with UV resin and then come in the back side, which isn't going to be easy to do because there's a plastic piece in my way. I may cut this out because the other issue is that the hole for this bulb that's supposed to go here, which is this one in the middle, is not big enough. That hole's not big enough for this bulb to fit in. So that hole's got to be made bigger anyway. Plus, if I want to light all these windows back here as even as possible, I'm going to have to remove most of this part. Probably just cut it back up to here some, so that way I can still put these bulbs up here where they need to go. But just cut this shorter. That way this opens this up more. And then I'm going to mount this, probably mount this back a little bit further from those openings. I'll paint those on the back side with clear red, my clear red Tamiya, or my Model Masters transparent red, whichever one I've got. And that'll take care of that, I think. I think that'll work. The front light here, these grills, is going to take some work too. Let me turn this on. Definitely is going to need a lot of diffusion. You can see the two bulbs in there. But I don't know that sanding this is going to be enough diffusion. I'm going to smoke the lens on this just like I did on the engines. Just because it kind of looks that way to me on the studio model when I look at it. It looks like this glass is a bit darker when it's not lit. So I think what I'm going to do is try sanding this, put a little transparent black over it as a smoke. It's the same as smoke. Put a little transparent black over it and see how that does. If I don't like that, I can get the clear part and paint that with my transparent red as well and try using that instead. Or maybe even use a combination of this, fit this in behind that, cut this down a little bit, and then fit it in behind that to give a little more diffusion. Which I might try that first of all, because that sounds like a pretty good idea. So that's my plan. I got to work this out. As you can see, it's way too pointed there. So it's as pointed as Spock's ears. But anyway, so I got to work on that. I've got these parts painted up. I did paint that one little piece that I was saying looks like a shock. I used I put it up now. I used I think it was an antique gold. Antique gold from Deco Art. That's what I used because when I looked at studio pictures, it looked gold, but it didn't look like a shiny gold like this one is that I'm going to use on the top of the neck. So that's what I used to paint these. And then these parts, of course, they just go right into place on here. So put one there, and then this one, I've already got the lights run into this, so they just snap right into place on the sides. And then that's gonna finish that part. That'll be all done. But another thing I got to look at too, you're gonna have to watch out for is this is open back here, and I can see right now you're probably just like this front part that I got to fill in yet. Probably going to get a light leak back here. And you may not, but because it's a pretty tight fit, but I could just see there being the slightest light leak maybe from back here, because those bulbs, these bulbs that light these two lights on the back sit right here, so it's going to be a lot of light right there. So I may cut a piece of plastic styrene paint it black and then fit it in there just to block that out. Typically I would use the tulip, but that's a lot of tulip to squeeze into that hole. So I don't think I want to do that. If I can get into another option would be to put a piece of tape over this and put some UV resin in there and then paint that black on the outside or the inside. So I'll figure out a solution for that, and I will talk about that in the next video because this video is already getting kind of long. I think I'm already over 30 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, and when we come back I'll talk about the solutions for this, and I'll be working on this part next, the neck and the head. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering, I did check, and it says you can't put the wires in after you seal it. You can. The wire will fit through here that you need. The one wire that you have to run up the neck into here, you can get it through there. You can fish it through there with this all put together. So don't worry about that. But I do have a little more. I got a couple spots where these that set of windows went around that I need to putty and sand a little more. Got a couple little gaps there still. But I'll get that worked out. Ready to start working on that one as well. So that's my plan. We come back, I'll let you know what I come up with for this as far as working out the lights, and then we will start on these last couple pieces, and we're getting close. So stick with me here. We're going to work this out. But thank you to everybody that's been watching. All the new subscribers, welcome. I appreciate you subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out tremendously. Again, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsors, Cass over Lake Monster Details, Gus over at GCals, and Gary over at Mask Design, whose masks we are using on this project. So again, everybody, thank you for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.